September 2025. Just days after one of the most emotional performances ever aired on reality television, Simon Cowell makes an announcement that leaves the entire studio silent. But this wasn't just any goodbye. It came right after a heartbreaking reveal from Roland Abante, one that changed everything about this season of the show. Doctors delivered the kind of news no one ever wants to hear, and somehow, Roland still walked onto that stage, still sang, still gave Simon a moment he'll never forget, a moment that left everyone in tears, and Simon without words. But what happened after the cameras stopped rolling shocked even the crew. Simon pulled Roland aside, and what he said next wasn't just goodbye to a contestant. It might have been a goodbye to something much bigger. For years, Simon Cowell has been the towering figure behind some of the world's biggest talent shows. From The X Factor to America's Got Talent, his sharp wit and ruthless honesty turned unknown singers into global stars. But behind the scenes, even the most unshakable public figures face moments that bring everything crashing down. That moment arrived when news broke about one of Cowell's most promising discoveries. Roland Abante, the Filipino singer, known for his soulful voice and emotional performances, had captured the hearts of millions. But now, headlines were swirling with devastating updates that no one saw coming. It was a typical Tuesday morning when fans first noticed the subtle hints on Simon Cowell's social media, a cryptic message, a lack of his usual upbeat posts, and then silence. For days, speculation ran wild. Some thought it was a publicity stunt. Others feared something more serious was unfolding. Then came the confirmation that left fans stunned. Roland Abante, the breakout star who had recently wowed Cowell and millions on America's Got Talent, had received a tragic medical diagnosis. The specifics were unclear at first, but one thing was undeniable. The news had shaken Cowell to his core. For Simon Cowell, known for his tough exterior and no-nonsense approach, the impact was visible almost immediately. Friends and industry insiders
music over his peers. This early inclination towards music would lay the groundwork for his future career. Simon's parents divorced.
His team, typically tight-lipped, confirmed that Simon was taking time to process the situation. And as more details about Roland's condition began to emerge,
he was young, which had a significant impact on him. He attended several schools, including the prestigious Dover College, but struggled with academics. His rebellious nature and tendency to...
mogul known for discovering and mentoring raw talent, this was a moment of reflection, heartbreak, and possibly goodbye. Before the world knew about his heartbreaking diagnosis,
push boundaries often landed him in trouble. In many ways, he was a misfit, but this character...
Hailing from Cebu, Philippines, Roland wasn't born into fame or fortune. In fact, most of his early life was defined by struggle and quiet perseverance.
Characteristic would later serve him well in the competitive world of show business. Despite his academic challenges, his love for music and entertainment only grew. Inspired by his mother's involvement in the arts, Simon found solace
in local karaoke bars and small community events. Roland's voice became the hidden gem of his neighborhood. It wasn't polished or coached, but it was raw, powerful, and impossible to ignore. When clips of his performances began circulating on social media, it wasn't long before they caught the attention of global talent scouts. But it was America's Got Talent that truly catapulted him into the spotlight. His audition, featuring a hauntingly beautiful rendition of When a Man Loves a Woman, left both the judges and the audience speechless. Even the notoriously hard-to-impress Simon Cowell was visibly moved. With eyes closed and arms crossed, Cowell listened as Roland poured his soul into every note. By the end, the entire auditorium was on its feet, and Cowell, known for his brutal critiques, simply said, "Was incredible." That moment marked the beginning of what many believed would be a life-changing journey for Roland. The world had discovered its next underdog hero, a man who had battled poverty, obscurity, and doubt, now standing on the world's biggest stage. For Simon Cowell, who had built his career on spotting raw, authentic talent, Roland was more than just another contestant. He was a reminder of why these shows mattered. But as the standing ovations and viral videos mounted, few could have predicted the cruel twist of fate waiting just around the corner. Despite his reputation as television's most formidable critic, Simon Cowell has always had a soft spot for underdogs. And with Roland Abante, that connection ran deeper than most people realized. Behind the sharp suits, stern expression, and biting one-liners, Simon saw something in Roland that reminded him of the countless unknowns he had championed throughout his career. More importantly, he saw the quiet determination, the kind born not from fame hunger, but from necessity. Roland didn't sing for attention. He sang because music was woven into his survival. Off-camera, sources say Simon took a particular interest in Roland's journey. Unlike other contestants, Roland's path to the AGT stage wasn't lined with handlers or high-priced vocal coaches. It was raw. It was real. Simon reportedly arranged for additional mentorship and vocal coaching for Roland, recognizing that with the right guidance, this Filipino sensation could become a global icon. It wasn't just about the competition anymore. It was about giving someone from the humblest beginnings a genuine shot at changing his life and his family's future. That unspoken bond between mentor and artist only made the news of Roland's tragic diagnosis more painful. For Simon, who has weathered years of celebrity ups and downs, it wasn't just another sad headline. It was personal. Friends close to the music mogul say the news blindsided him. The man who had stood beside Roland as his star began to rise, now faced the unthinkable possibility that their time together, on and off stage, might be cut heartbreakingly short. And that realization would lead Simon to make a decision no one expected. The rumors swirled for days, but when the truth finally came out, it hit like a punch to the gut. Roland Abante, just as his dreams were materializing on a global scale, had been diagnosed with a rare, aggressive neurological condition. While specifics were kept private initially, close family sources confirmed it was a degenerative disease affecting his motor functions, potentially threatening not only his mobility, but his ability to sing. For a man whose voice was his livelihood, his identity, his escape, this diagnosis was nothing short of devastating. Medical experts consulted by media outlets explained that conditions like Roland's often progress unpredictably. Some experience rapid deterioration, while others battle for years, fighting to hold on to their abilities. But one thing was certain: time was precious. For Simon Cowell, hearing those words wasn't just heartbreaking, it was a sobering reminder that fame, money, and influence can't shield those you care about from life's cruelest twists. Suddenly, the future of Roland's music career, and even his basic quality of life, hung in the balance. The outpouring of support was immediate. Fans across the globe flooded social media with messages of love, prayer, and solidarity. Hashtags like "Few Stay Strong Roland" and "Ew Pray for Roland" began trending. But behind the scenes, Simon Cowell was grappling with something even bigger, a decision that would not only affect Roland's future, but could mark the end of an era for Cowell himself. It was a moment of reckoning, a time to ask himself what truly mattered after decades of chasing success in an unforgiving industry. Simon Cowell is no stranger to the highs and lows of show business. He's weathered scandals, heartbreak, even life-threatening accidents of his own. But sources close to Cowell say Roland Abante's diagnosis hit differently. It wasn't about ratings or contracts. It was about watching pure, raw talent get stripped away by something completely out of anyone's control. Insiders revealed that behind closed doors, Simon struggled to focus on upcoming shows and commitments. The music mogul, known for being calculated and composed, was noticeably distracted, quieter, and, some say, deeply reflective. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. Production meetings missed, press events postponed, and then, most telling of all, Simon began pulling away from the spotlight altogether. Paparazzi, who once easily snapped photos of Cowell on leisurely walks or yacht trips, suddenly found him elusive. His public appearances dropped. Friends described a man at a crossroads, questioning the constant machine of television fame and wondering whether it was time to finally step back. After decades of building global franchises, Simon Cowell, the face of modern talent discovery, was considering saying goodbye. Fans were stunned when entertainment insiders began reporting that Simon was preparing to make a major announcement. Was he leaving America's Got Talent? Stepping down from the X Factor productions? No one could say for sure, but one thing was certain. Roland Abante's tragic diagnosis had shaken Cowell to his core. And for a man whose public identity was built around nurturing talent, seeing that talent so cruelly impacted forced him to face uncomfortable questions. Was the industry still worth it? Or was it finally time to walk away? For over 2 decades, Simon Cowell has been the architect behind some of the biggest musical success stories in history. From One Direction to Leona Lewis, Susan Boyle to Kelly Clarkson, his ability to spot raw talent and transform unknown singers into global superstars is unparalleled. But with that success comes pressure, the endless search for the next big thing, the constant scrutiny, and the heavy responsibility of shaping people's futures. Roland Abante represented more than another contestant. He embodied everything Cowell built his empire on: hope, resilience, and unexpected brilliance. Roland's story resonated with audiences precisely because it wasn't polished. There were no record label connections or flashy managers behind the scenes. Just a man with an extraordinary voice, fighting against the odds. And that authenticity is what drew Cowell in. Industry insiders have often said that beneath his sharp critiques and on-screen bravado, Simon has always respected the grit of real artists. That's why Roland's sudden health crisis cut so deep. It wasn't just the loss of a potential star, it was the unraveling of a dream years in the making. As Cowell watched Roland's health battle unfold, the entertainment world buzzed with speculation. Would Simon step away? Was this finally the moment when the king of talent shows would turn his back on the fame machine? Friends say the answer wasn't simple. For Cowell, leaving wasn't just about walking off stage, it was about honoring the values that built his career in the first place. And as he looked back at the countless lives he'd changed, one truth became harder to ignore. Sometimes, even the biggest dreams meet the harshest realities. Behind the polished world of television, the stage lights, viral performances, roaring crowds, and carefully edited highlight reels, a quieter, more private story was unfolding. It was the kind of story the cameras never caught, the kind that didn't make headlines or social media feeds, but one that would, in time, shape Simon Cowell's most significant decision in decades. While audiences debated contestants and judges bantered on live television, far away from the spotlight, a series of hushed, deeply personal conversations began to take place. Conversations that peeled away the glitz and stripped the moment down to its rawest, most human form. Multiple sources close to the situation revealed that as Roland Abante's diagnosis became public knowledge within inner circles, Cowell's response was immediate, but not in the way most would expect from a media giant. There were no public statements, no PR-crafted messages, no camera crews capturing his reaction. Instead, Simon reached out the only way that mattered: quietly, directly, and relentlessly. Those first few calls with Roland and his family were, according to insiders, emotional, unfiltered, and disarmingly vulnerable. For a man often portrayed as guarded, calculating, and fiercely composed, this was something different entirely. Friends who witnessed the aftermath of those conversations described Simon as visibly shaken, even haunted. Gone was the familiar, sharp-tongued executive, the one who had built global franchises, commanded boardrooms, and dissected performances with clinical precision. In his place was a man stripped of public persona, faced with the stark, undeniable truth of human fragility. These weren't producer-to-contestant conversations. These were quiet, late-night phone calls filled with long silences, difficult questions, and raw emotion. Those who know Simon best say he stumbled over his words, his usual cool confidence replaced by the uncertainty and helplessness that only comes when confronted by something completely beyond control. But Simon's response wasn't confined to words. Friends of Roland later confirmed what many had quietly suspected. Simon was doing everything in his power to help. Financial assistance for experimental treatments, private access to world-renowned medical specialists, even quiet consultations with philanthropic contacts outside the entertainment industry. But unlike so many of Cowell's moves in the public sphere, this wasn't about image, reputation, or media management. There were no staged photo ops, no press releases. For once, it wasn't about the next viral moment or television ratings. It was about doing the right thing, quietly and without applause. And yet, despite all his influence and resources, Simon found himself facing an unfamiliar and painful reality. There were limits to what money, power, and fame could fix. For a man whose entire career had been built on the idea of transforming lives, plucking ordinary people from obscurity, and giving them the opportunity to chase impossible dreams, watching Roland's health decline was not just tragic. It was a profound, almost cruel reminder of how fragile those dreams really are. In Roland, Simon had seen not only extraordinary talent but resilience, heart, and authenticity. The very qualities that, for years, had fueled his belief in what the entertainment world could be at its best. It was during these quiet, off-camera weeks that Simon Cowell began to retreat, not just physically, but emotionally, from the relentless machine of show business. The endless cycle of auditions, rehearsals, televised performances, and press appearances suddenly felt distant, almost irrelevant, compared to the raw human battle unfolding behind the scenes. Friends describe Simon during this time as introspective, subdued, and uncharacteristically absent from key production meetings and promotional obligations. The man once considered the driving force behind talent television was, for the first time in his career, questioning not just the next step, but the entire path he had walked. Industry insiders say it was in these moments of painful reflection that Simon began making the decision the world would soon learn about. Away from the cameras, removed from the applause and spotlight, Cowell was forced to confront a truth few in his position ever do. Even the most powerful industry figures can't shield those they care about from life's most brutal twists. And with that realization came a quiet, steady resolve. There would be no dramatic exit staged for the cameras, no farewell orchestrated for ratings. Instead, there would be something far rarer in the world Simon had spent decades dominating: silence, humility, and an honest goodbye. Not just to a contestant's journey, but perhaps to the very stage that had made him a household name. As days turned to weeks, and weeks slowly blurred into months, the entertainment world couldn't ignore the quiet, unsettling shift surrounding Simon Cowell any longer. It started small, subtle, almost too subtle for the fast-paced, attention-hungry industry to notice at first. A missed interview here, a skipped press event there. But for those who had worked alongside him for years, the signs were unmistakable. The man who had once been the unshakable, ever-present architect of modern talent shows, the sharp-tongued, sharply dressed mogul who built careers and crushed dreams with the raise of an eyebrow, was withdrawing. For nearly 2 decades, Simon Cowell had been an immovable fixture in global entertainment. His blunt critiques, viral television moments, and uncanny ability to turn unknown singers into international superstars made him both revered and reviled in equal measure. He thrived on the spotlight, navigated scandal with calculated precision, and orchestrated media narratives like a maestro conducts a symphony. But now, all that was changing. He was stepping back, but not with a dramatic headline, not with a farewell tour or teary goodbye special. His retreat came quietly, like a house light dimming before the final curtain call. And the silence? That was perhaps the loudest part of all. Simon Cowell, known for his unapologetic soundbites and scathing wit, had gone completely quiet. There were no cryptic tweets hinting at future plans, no snappy Instagram posts fueling speculation, not even the usual pre-recorded video messages for fans or press. The man whose voice once echoed across television screens worldwide had chosen stillness, a decision so unlike him, it sent ripples through the industry. His inner circle remained unusually tight-lipped. Publicists offered vague, rehearsed responses. Friends declined interviews. But behind closed doors, the truth was quietly spreading. Roland Abante's devastating diagnosis had shaken Cowell to his very core. For months, Cowell had championed Roland, the unassuming Filipino singer with the voice of an angel and the story of a fighter. He saw in Roland everything the industry so often overlooks: raw, untamed talent, and a resilience forged not by privilege, but by struggle. When Roland's diagnosis, a rare, degenerative neurological disease, became known within their private circle, it wasn't just a tragic blow to a rising star's career. For Simon, it was personal. It wasn't a headline, it was a gut punch. A painful, unavoidable reminder that no amount of fame, money, or influence can shield someone from life's cruel twists. The entertainment press, never one to miss an opportunity, filled the vacuum with speculation. Headlines ran wild with theories. Would Cowell return for another season of America's Got Talent? Would the X Factor finally fade into history? Was he simply burned out, or was there more to the story? The tabloids feasted on the uncertainty, dissecting every canceled appearance, every vague social media post. But behind the headlines and internet chatter, a more profound truth quietly unfolded. One few in the public truly understood. For the first time in decades, Simon Cowell wasn't orchestrating the narrative. He wasn't teasing a comeback, building anticipation for a new show, or positioning himself as the next kingmaker. He wasn't playing the media game at all. Those who knew him best saw the shift for what it was: a man reckoning with loss, questioning the relentless machine of fame, and, perhaps most unsettling of all, contemplating the unimaginable. After building an empire that defined an era of entertainment, was Simon Cowell finally preparing to say goodbye? And not as a calculated career move, but as a quiet, human response to watching a bright young talent like Roland Abante face the unimaginable. In the quiet corners of industry events, producers whispered the same question. Had the man who turned the world's spotlight on so many finally decided to turn it off for himself? It didn't take long for the entertainment world to piece the puzzle together. At first, it was easy to miss. The small, subtle absences that only industry veterans and die-hard fans would notice. Simon Cowell missing a promotional shoot? Not unheard of. A rescheduled appearance on a talk show? Chalk it up to busy schedules. But as the weeks turned into months, the pattern became impossible to ignore. A man who had been the face of televised talent for over 2 decades. The sharp suit, the piercing stare, the brutally honest soundbites, was no longer where the world expected him to be. Behind the glitz and headlines, the whispers started quietly at first. In production meetings for America's Got Talent, Cowell's once dominant presence had faded. Where he once sat at the head of the table, steering the conversation, pushing producers for the next breakout star, there was now only an empty chair and a growing sense of uncertainty. Show staff, accustomed to his direct involvement, noticed his focus drifting. Close collaborators described him as reflective, subdued, even preoccupied. For a man known for his meticulous control over every detail, it was a noticeable and unsettling shift. Soon, the rumors escaped the boardrooms and spilled onto entertainment blogs, fan forums, and news outlets. Insiders revealed that Simon had been confiding in a small circle of trusted friends for months, quietly voicing doubts about the relentless pace of his career. The thrill of discovering raw, unfiltered talent, the very thing that fueled his empire, had been overshadowed by something heavier: the mounting pressures, the public scrutiny, the quiet, creeping sense of burnout. But more than that, there was Roland Abante. Roland's tragic diagnosis wasn't just another headline to Cowell, it was a breaking point. For all his reputation as a tough, calculating showbiz giant, those close to him say Simon had been profoundly affected by the young Filipino singer's story. Roland represented everything Cowell had built his empire upon: raw, undiscovered talent, rising from the most humble of beginnings, defying the odds with nothing but a voice and a dream. Watching that dream crumble under the weight of a devastating medical diagnosis hit closer to home than many realized. Friends later revealed that Simon spent sleepless nights reflecting on more than just Roland's fate. It stirred up unresolved questions about his own path, the years of chasing ratings, the constant churn of auditions, the pressure, too,